Hey, welcome everybody. Another CloudFormation or Let's Build session. It is Thursday, not Wednesday. I'm on vacation this week, so been a little preoccupied with some non-work stuff and just running a little late this week. So welcome back. If you remember last week, we started working on a new project where we're going to use the Global Accelerator as part of our solution. Before we jump into the console and everything and start working on this again, let's just quickly refresh our minds, more for myself, just to talk a little bit about what we're doing. So if you recall, we have a VPC, right? And in this VPC, we're going to have a load balancer. And that load balancer is going to talk to an EC2 instance. And this will be HTTP traffic. Okay. What's unique in our situation is that we want to be able to handle both HTTPS traffic and TCP traffic on the same domain. And this is based off of something I did for a customer. So we've got a client here, and that client could be using HTTPS or TCP. And the challenge that I had when I was setting this up is how do we handle both of these types of traffic when we have a load balancer, right? An application load balancer, because an application load balancer will handle HTTP, HTTPS traffic. And I went through a bunch of iterations on this to try to get something that worked. And what I ended up landing on was using a global accelerator to handle the TCP. Actually, let me show it like this maybe. All right, if we've got TCP traffic and HTTPS traffic, the HTTPS traffic, oh boy, I forget what we did last week. Jeez. The traffic, the entry point for both types of traffic is going to be the global accelerator. And then the global accelerator will send TCP traffic directly to our EC2 instance, and the any HTTPS traffic will go to our load balancer. The other piece that I'm not showing here is we also wanted to add a layer of protection with a WAF. So we can hang that WAF off of the load balancer and be able to satisfy this interesting use case by using the global accelerator here as our entry point, and then based on the type of traffic, sending it a different route to get to ultimately the destination that's an EC2 instance. Okay, so that's kind of a very quick recap. And oh, the other thing that we talked about last week was, I can't remember the context during the stream, but I had discussed the need to protect these resources, right? Security groups and security groups. And if you were here last stream, you remember that I was debating with Q about how to get traffic to the load balancer, but add that layer of security with this security group to ensure the traffic only comes from the global accelerator. And the debate that I was having with Q was, I had in my head a recollection that I had done this, okay? But I couldn't remember how I did this little setup. And Q was telling me you can't do it, and I was saying to Q, I'm sure you can. And in the end, I would say we were both partly right and partly wrong. What you can do is the global accelerator supports a VPC endpoint. And the VPC endpoint, it's going to be hard to draw on this diagram. I won't try it. The VPC endpoint exists in the VPC, right? So the traffic that's flowing from the global accelerator, the route would actually be global accelerator through the VPC endpoint to the application load balancer. And because we have that VPC interface endpoint, it has a security group around it. Aha, see? So we're able then to control that traffic by deploying a VPC interface endpoint that's associated with the global accelerator. That took a little bit of digging to figure it out. I went back in my notes and went back to the reference architecture, and ultimately I found in my build doc what I was looking for that I just couldn't remember on stream. So with that said, let's jump into the project and just kind of recall where we are and what's been deployed. So I've got the Git project here, okay? And you can see, if you remember what we did last week, we set up a global accelerator, we set up our VPC, and we set up those dummy security groups, just more placeholders than anything. And if I jump over to the demo account, this should all be deployed now. If I go, let's actually go to CloudFormation, and we should have our 3 stacks, right? So there's our accelerator, there's the VPC, there's the global accelerator, there's the security groups. I think what we should do is, based on what I just mentioned, where we were talking about the idea of using a VPC endpoint and associating it with the global accelerator, looking at that first and figuring that part out, because it's sort of the foundation that we need to have in place for the rest of the setup, right? If we're thinking about these security groups and referencing security groups, it's going to be important. So why don't we have a look at that? I thought first, just to refresh my own memory, we could go to the VPC console. And we have 2 VPCs. Oh, let's get rid of this one. We don't need this one anymore. Oh, it's got a whole bunch of stuff hung off of it. I'll leave it for now. Okay. I taught a class last week, and that's the remnants of some demos I did in class. So the endpoint is what we're after. And I will delete this endpoint just so we have less to look at here. And if we go create an endpoint, I'm not actually going to create this. We're just going to look. So I'm going to say global. This is what we're after. Oh, that's not it. S3 global access point. Accelerator? If I could spell. Oh, what am I missing here? Global. Is it a special one up here, maybe? That's not it. This is for RDS. This I think is for Lattice solutions. Oh, I thought I would wing this and not sort of do any pre-work so that we could just build this live. So let's do this. Give me a second to Google this. Okay, so here it is. Endpoints for standard accelerators in the global accelerator can be a network load balancer, an application load balancer, EC2 instances, or elastic IPs. So we have an ALB. Okay, in AWS Global Accelerator, static IPs can serve as our single point of contact for clients. So we've got that accelerator already. If we jump back here and we just go to Global Accelerator, here's the one we're using for our project, right? If we and there's the 2 static IPs. Okay. And with a standard accelerator, global accelerator distributes incoming traffic across healthy endpoints. All right, that's fine. Our endpoints for this, if you remember our little diagram there, are the load balancer for HTTP traffic, and the EC2 instance itself for the TCP traffic. Okay. Global Accelerator directs traffic to endpoints by using the port or port range that you specify for the listener that the endpoint group for the endpoint belongs to. Okay. See, this still isn't exactly what I want. This is just a standard endpoint thing. Let me do a different search for this. Give me a second. I'm going to call it maybe search for VPC endpoint. Maybe this is what I'm after. That's just a description of the standard endpoints. When you add a network load balancer, an internal application load balancer, or an EC2 instance endpoint in your global accelerator, you can enable internet traffic to flow directly to and from the endpoint in virtual private clouds, VPCs, by targeting it in a private subnet. The VPC that contains the load balancer or EC2 instance must have an internet gateway, which we have, right, attached to it, to indicate that the VPC accepts internet traffic. However, you don't need public addresses on your load balancer or EC2 endpoints. So what we're doing, I know I didn't show it in my diagram, but what we're really going to end up doing here is this load balancer, it's not a public load balancer. This would be a private load balancer. So both the ALB and our EC2 resources, I won't draw it on the diagram because it's already messy enough, but you can imagine in our VPC, these resources are both deployed inside a private VPC. The only resource that is publicly accessible for, in our case, our fictitious client here, would be the global accelerator. Okay. Let me actually zoom in. I'm looking at what's on my screen. It's a little small if you're watching this. Okay. Actually, let me do this. That's a little better. All right. What's the next paragraph say? This is different from the typical internet gateway use case in which both public IP addresses and internet gateway routes are required for internet traffic to flow to the instance or load balancer. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, when you use a global accelerator for internet traffic, global accelerator overrides the typical internet route, and all logical connections that arrive through the global accelerator also return through the global accelerator rather than the internet gateway. Okay. Again, this really isn't... Okay, I think what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. We've got, if we go back to the editor here, here's our security groups, right? So there's our load balancing security group. And if you remember, as we were going back and forth with Q last week, we ended up hard coding these IP ranges that Q had given us based on AWS's IP list that they provide for their various services. I think what we're going to do is we're going to actually just for now, let's get rid of these. Okay. We're going to leave no rules on our load balancer security group. And here we're going to allow, again, we're going to just remove all of this stuff for the time being. Okay. All right, so this is just really, really basic. Let's actually push this. Okay, so in theory, what should happen is that'll update our security groups and just get rid of any of those hard-coded GA references for now. And I think what we'll do is we're going to work on our load balancer configuration, okay? And we've got this little skeleton that we set up last week, right? And I'm just going to copy this. And just like we did before, we'll use this as our starting point. So this is going to deploy our, I'll call it a private load balancer. Sometimes you'll see it referred to as an internal load balancer. So I'll say it just deploys our private ALB. This will leave all the same. Those are our standard things. We're not going to use any conditions. And we're going to say ALB. Now the ALB, Let me pull up the reference for this. The LB actually has quite a few moving parts to it. Just like we normally do, let's sort of just go through these together and figure out what is applicable for what it is we're building. So here's the documentation for the load balancer itself. Enable prefix for IPv6. We're going to keep this as simple as possible. Okay. We are going to set some load balancer attributes. We'll give it a name. The schema for our case will be internal or private, whatever they call it. We'll refer to the security groups. We'll refer to our mappings, or sorry, here, our subnets, tag it and define the type. Pretty basic. I think what we'll do to get started is we'll leave off the load balancing attributes and we'll build that out over time. What I want to do here is, this is where we can do things like logging, load balancer logging, but we don't have an S3 bucket yet anyways. So I think for now, to test our theory about the requirements for setting up this elusive VPC endpoint that at this point I'm believing that I'm making up, getting that set up, I think we need a load balancer in place first, and then a private load balancer, and then we can just sort of through the console do some testing and see how this works. So we'll keep this bare bones for now, and then fill it out so it sort of follows best practice, security, and logging and things like that. Okay. All right. So first, let's just make sure we get the right type definition here. Oh boy, let's try this again. I haven't been working this week, and it's like my brain has forgotten my VI shortcuts. Okay, load balancing v2 load balancer. All right, so I'm just reading through the list here. IP address type. What's the default? Application load balancer. The possible values are IPv4 for IPv4 for IPv4 addresses. Dual stack, so it'll do both v4 and v6. What's the default? It doesn't show a default. It's either going to be IPv4 or dual stack. So to keep this just, again, as simple as possible, we won't add that for now. We talked about load balancer attributes. We're going to worry about that later. We have our sort of name standard that we've used. I'm going to borrow that out of another template. So I'll just put the to-do holder in there. Our scheme in this case is going to be internal. Okay, so this is, we're going to associate this to our private subnets. Our security groups. So we've only got the one security group, but just placehold that for now. And then our subnets. So I'm going to do the same thing here. We'll just call this 1 and 2. These will be our two private subnets that we'll tie this to. We have a type. So in this case, it's going to be application. And then we have our set of tags, which we'll borrow from here. Actually, I'm going to grab this whole thing. So this is 10 lines. All right, and we'll just pull this up here. And for the suffix, we'll call it ALB. The rest of this is fine. This should do the trick. We'll get rid of that. And then what we need to do here is, remember, we're using the not parent-child nested stacks. We're using chained stacks. So we have to refer to the security group stack and the VPC stack for this. So I'm going to add these up here. Now, how did we do this? I want to follow the same structure that we used before. Okay, we just called it stack reference. So let's say 3 lines. So there's our VPC stack, and then we'll say SG stack. Okay, so let me see if I can remember this. Okay, this is the crazy intrinsic function that you would think by now I would remember. And then we do sub, in this case, VPC stack dash private subnet 0, like that. Okay, so we're just going to copy that, and then we'll check those. These are the export values, if you remember. We'll check those against what's actually in the template to be sure. And then we can do the same thing here. We'll just copy this. We'll change this to SG stack. And in this case, I want to say it's just ALB ID. But again, we'll check that. So let's do SG. And if we scroll to the bottom, oh, look at that. We didn't add the outputs. We cheated. Okay, so let's add the outputs. We'll clean these out. And what I normally do is I do ALB SG ID. We'll say value is we're gonna have to look in the documentation for that one. I don't remember. And then we can use sub. I think we just need the ID values that we want. Let me just check very quickly here. What are the return values? Okay, so when you pass the logical ID to this resource, it returns the ID of the security group. Yeah, so we can do, this becomes ref ALB SG SG, like that. Okay, so let's get rid of these, and we'll just add the missing guys here. So all we have is another EC2 security group. That's it. So we're just going to copy these 4 lines. And we'll do exactly the same thing. Right? And then do that. So let's add these. I'm just going to do this carefully for now. So that's that one. And now we can fix this. I already forget what we just called it. ALB SGID. I think those are, let's actually do something before we decide on the output value. If we go to our actual environment and we go to CloudFormation, this is the name. So it's going to be Twitch, right? TW Accelerator Demo SG. So I'm duplicating SG in the name, right? So instead, what we'll do is we'll just say ALB ID and EC2 ID, okay? And then that makes more sense then. Okay, so let's check the VPC and we'll have a look at the outputs. I want the 2 subnets. So there's private subnet 0. So you can see it's private subnet 0 and private subnet 1. So that's perfect. I think we should be good. So we could commit this. And I'm just going to call it added ALB. I'm going to call it skeleton because it really isn't anything at this point. Let's see what's going on in the pipeline. I can kind of see it in the background, and I think I see red. Oh, I don't. Okay, that's good. Let's have a look at the pipelines. Okay, so there's our ALB skeleton. I created a branch for today. So we're going to say merge. And we're going to leave this branch for all the work we do today. So we'll just delete it. Okay, and we'll merge that. Oh, yeah, of course. Well, it's not doing everything, right? Because we put the load balancer there, but we didn't update our deploy scripts, which is okay, actually. We can make sure that the changes that I made to the security group, which were removed all the references to those hard-coded IP ranges for the global accelerator, we removed those, and then we also updated or added those missing outputs. So we can check all this first. So if we go in here, we look at outputs, we should have them now. So those are pretty clean output IDs. And if we just check one of these resources, doesn't matter which, oh, look at that. I've got a typo in the name. We'll fix that in a second. But if we look at this, there should be no inbound rules. Allows all outbound. If we check the EC2, it's allowing inbound HTTPS traffic from this. This should be the security group associated with our load balancer. Yeah, okay. So let's fix this name, because that's going to be a problem, right? And we'll add the load balancer to our deploy script. So first thing, let's go here. Yeah, see, I just got the name wrong here. So we'll say that ALB. Now this will be interesting. I might actually deploy this first. My recollection is we can't change the name of one of these. Okay, typo in name. Let's see what CloudFormation does. I think it's going to complain when it tries to deploy this. So we go back to our pipeline. Let's run a merge. We should have a new merge. I think it might fail because I can't quite remember if you can, as soon as you start hard coding names, resource names in CloudFormation, some things, if I have to replace it, delete it and replace it with something new, because I'm referring to that security group somewhere else, it might not like it. Let's see what it does. So that's at 728. Oh, look at that. It worked. Okay, great. Good, good, good. So let's check to make sure this name is changed. That's better. Okay, that's good. All right, so that's that part. Let's wire up the deploy script for the load balancer. And we're going to do two pieces. So we will grab these. This is our validation scripts. So in this case, it's ALB. And then the other thing we want to do is, I can't remember the name of the include file that we're using, demo. So there's our HG deploy. So let's just copy this. There's the global accelerator. We'll just put this at the bottom. And we'll say ALB deploy. And if you remember, we referenced two things. So we'll copy this, make it SG stack. And this requires, it actually, if we're just kind of following what we did before, it requires a VPC to be there and the security groups. And then we just need to say SG stack equals SG stack. The rest of this could stay the same. Let's see how we did. And this is going to take a bit of time. That's why I'm distracted here. Not looking at the right screen. Okay, so the validate passed. Let's run our merge. See what happens. Yeah, okay. So something's wrong here. No export named. Oh, yeah, I've got a typo in the stack name somewhere. See how it's just blank ALBID? So if we flip back to the IDE, I made the text a little bigger here. Hopefully it's a little easier to read. So if we go here, oh, see what I did? Yeah, right there. Just had a bad value there. Let me actually check. What did I do down here? SG stack equals SG stack. Okay. I'll have to delete this. Okay, that looks good. Okay, doesn't look like it aired out immediately. Okay, that's a little better. There's not much to this, right? It's literally just the load balancer. There's no listeners, there's nothing. That means if we go to the EC2 console and look down the left here, we should have, whoops, we should have a load balancer coming to life. Okay, there you go. It's provisioning. Did we give it a decent name? Yeah, that's pretty good. That'll do the trick. And then if we click on it and we look at network maps, that's our IP range. These should be, if we click on these should both be private subnets if we've done that right. So private CA Central 1A and private Central CA 1B. Okay, great. So that's good. Let's go back to CloudFormation. I find the load balancers take a bit of time to provision. So in the meantime, we're going to make a change on our global accelerator. And we're going to do this manually because I'm still confused on what I was reading. Now, you can see we've got our listener set up. We did this programmatically in CloudFormation. The listener right now has no endpoint group. So think of the endpoint group in the global accelerator kind of like a target group in your load balancer config. So we can go here and we can say which region we're in. CA Central 1. Traffic dial, if you click this, it says invalid slug. My recollection of this, and I'd have to double check. Actually, let me check before I say something that's wrong. So we're looking at an endpoint group, traffic dial. Yeah, okay. So this is a way. So remember that the global accelerator is a global service, right? It's not bound to a particular region. So what we're able to do is traffic dials, we can adjust how traffic's flowing from a single accelerator to different regions, right? So, here's an example of a use case. If you want to upgrade an application in a region or do maintenance, then you can set the traffic to 0. Stop sending traffic to region A and set it to 100 on region B. So now what'll happen is all of the traffic will route to, let's just call it your secondary region. You can make changes in your primary one and then flip traffic back. Okay. And then a really other good example is sort of this idea of mixing solution or mixing traffic regions. So maybe we're sending 50% to US West 1 and 50% to US West 2 or US West 1 as example. Okay. So that's what that's for. In our case, we don't have other regions or anything, so we'll just leave it 100%. We want to send all the traffic to the endpoint group that's going to be defined in CA Central 1. So we'll say next, and then we're going to add an endpoint. So in this case, we'll say a load balancer. Here's our load balancer. And again, what's our traffic weighting? It goes from 0 to 255. We're going to say 255, which is essentially 100% of the traffic is going to go to this one load balancer. You can imagine you can add multiple endpoints if you wanted, but for our example, all the traffic goes to the load balancer, and then the load balancer will decide where to send that traffic based on the health of the target or targets behind it. So we'll say save. Now this is the part that I'm still a little confused on. Okay, so there we go. This is kind of what's still messing around in my head. If we go VPC and we filter on this guy, endpoints. See, we have no endpoints. See, this is all lattice. I'm literally just trying stuff here. See, that's S3. Let's try something else. AWS Global Accelerator Service Identifier. Let's try it like this. AWS IAM Actions. I don't care. I'm just going to say EC2. I want to get to a particular page. This page, what it does down here is on the left-hand side, it shows all of the different AWS services and then the actions that are available to those services. Now the question is, can we search here for accelerator? It isn't here, I don't think. That's DAX, there's Global Accelerator. So that's its service identifier, is just Global Accelerator, all one word. If we go back here, it's not here. Okay, hang on. Maybe I'm still confused. Let's go EC2. Let's go security groups. Look at that. That's what I was after. Okay. It must be doing this behind the scenes. I'm still not exactly sure how this. Yeah, for whatever reason, my brain was tied to a VPC endpoint that then gave you the ability to set that up, a security group for it, right? But it looks like what happens is when we had our global accelerator already set up. This is new. We had the global accelerator set up and we had no security group. I'm going to verify this because I'm more confused now than I was when we started. What I think just happened is when we associated the load balancer, our private load balancer, with the global accelerator created this security group. And if we look at it, there's no inbound, there's outbound rules. Okay. So let's go backwards and do this again. So if we go global accelerator and we find our GA, we grab the listener, and we're going to delete this listener endpoint group. Okay, this is the basically how we were pointing it to the load balancer. Okay, so that's gone. If we go back to VPC, does it clean up? And we go here, security groups, it's still there. Okay. I'm going to try one other thing. Let's grab the security group ID and let's go to config. And let's go resources. We'll search for security group. There's that security group. And I guess I could go here. CloudTrail event. So this is 7 o'clock tonight. Create tags. Load more. It's got to have more here. No? There we go. Create network interface. Security group. So this is when it's creating the security group, and the security group is bound to the private subnets. So we actually have 2 network interfaces. Let's have a look at this CloudTrail event. See this role right here? This is a service role. So this is a role that is created and maintained by AWS. And whenever you see this AWS service role, you know what you're looking at. So this is a role that AWS creates in our account, depending on the services you're using and stuff like that, to make sure that services are able to communicate with each other. So we can look at this role. We can't make any changes. Okay. What I'm going to try to do, let's see. I just want to test this theory. So we're going to go back to the VPC. Here's our Global Accelerator security group that I'm like 90% sure was created when we did that association with the Global Accelerator and our load balancer. So we're going to delete it. Okay. Oh, look, it won't let us delete it. Why not? It's associated to it. Oh, now it's just... Okay, we're gonna rip this down even more. I'm just trying to make sure I understand in my own mind where this comes from. So if I go back here, the stacks don't take very long to deploy, so we're gonna actually just clean up after ourselves. I think really the only things we need to delete are those 2 guys. Right? And this should, if the security group still exists after we've deleted this stack, which contains the Global Accelerator, we'll see if we can clean it up manually. Okay. And then we'll be very methodical about this. We'll redeploy the Global Accelerator and only that, and see if that security group gets created. Okay. Just to make sure we understand where it comes from. And you know what? While we're waiting on this, let's do something else. For today, just to try to get this to work, what I'd like to do is stand an instance up manually. This guy, I should have cleaned this up already. Let's get rid of that. And let's launch a new instance. And we'll call this TW. Let's make it look like all the other resources we've created. TW-accelerator. We'll do this programmatically later. Demo EC2. So this will be our server, which is going to listen on a particular port, but we'll also just use the dummy Apache page or something like that. Okay, I'll leave all this. None of this really matters. We are going to change it to a T3 small. Can we get a T3 small? Yeah, sure we can. There we go. We won't use a key pair. Let's make sure this is in the right VPC. So there's our demo VPC. We also want to make sure it goes into a private subnet, so that's fine. We have an existing security group. We've deployed that through CloudFormation, so that's done. And the only other thing I want to do for now is I want to associate it to an instance profile, and I'm going to use, I've left some resources around. Let's use this one. We'll say launch. We'll create that programmatically as well, so it ties in better with what we're actually trying to do. But I want to have this, and we can at least use it to test our load balancer configs and stuff like that. All right, so let's go back to CloudFormation. Okay, so everything's cleaned up here, right? We've still got our security group, we've still got our VPC, but the load balancer and the global accelerator are both gone. Let's get rid of a few of these windows. If we refresh our security group listing here, where is it? Security groups. Okay, there's the global accelerator again. Let's try to delete it. Will not be deleted. Do I have to maybe refresh? It shouldn't have resources associated to it anymore. In use. What's it in use with? Huh. It's definitely the Elastic Network Interface that's associated with the global accelerator when we deployed it. I wonder if it just takes a minute for it to go away. Because we definitely, let's just check. Yeah, we don't have a global accelerator anymore. Let's filter this down. There we go. That's better. See, it's gone now. So it just took it a bit to go away. All right, so let's run our pipeline again. Okay, all we really need to do is just rerun a couple jobs. We're going to do one at a time to make sure that we really understand where this is coming from. This should create a new global accelerator for us. Right? There it goes. If I refresh, you can see all we have is the default security group. So that's the security group created when we create our VPC. There's our load balancer, essentially placeholder security group, and there's our EC2 security group. So we created those through CloudFormation already. Hey, Common, welcome back. Yeah, it's automatically doing some stuff. I'm just trying to make sure I understand exactly where it's coming from. If you weren't here right at the beginning, I was explaining how last week we were debating, I was having a debate between what was in my head and what was coming from Q around how do we control the traffic going to our private or internal load balancer to control that so it can only originate from the global accelerator. And I did some reading after the fact, and I was sure that I read that it created a VPC endpoint. And again, I guess I just misread the documentation. And we did some more experimentation today. We can get a security group created, but I wasn't quite sure which resource was creating that. So let's check here. We've got our global accelerator now. Okay, that's great, right? It just looks like before. We've got our TCP traffic on 9898 and our 443 TCP traffic. I just want to check one thing here. Oh, never fails. Get logged back in here. Okay, so if we go global accelerator, right? So there's our GA. It's got the 2 ports. If we go back to our VPC and we filter this so that we only see our accelerator VPC, do we have that security group? We do not. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is we're going to go back to the pipeline and we're going to deploy this load balancer now. And remember, this is just a a shell, essentially. It's literally just the ALB resource, no listeners, no target groups, nothing. Okay. Yeah, it's sometimes it can be trying to figure out where the source of some of this stuff is, or the source of some of this stuff can be challenging. So if we go back here, our load balancer is provisioning. Now, if we go to the VPC, my hypothesis, to go back to high school, I almost said high school English, high school science class, my hypothesis is that this security group will not be here until I associate the global accelerator with our internal / private ALB. Okay. Which means even though the load balancer is deployed, we have no association between those two resources. Therefore, the load balance or the security group won't be there. It's only there once we associate those two things together. Let's see what happens. So we go here, still nothing. Let's actually open up the EC2 console. Go to our load balancer. Still says provisioning. We're going to give this a bit of time to come to life, right? Oh, the signed out pop-up. Yeah. Yeah. It's not so bad if you're using like CloudFormation or whatever, right? But if you're doing things manually, you know, the one that always gets me, I've learned some lessons on, is if I'm opening a support ticket and you get logged out, right? You lose your support ticket. So at this point, what I do is I actually, it seems funny, but I type the text for my ticket in my Obsidian vault. It's just a markdown file basically. And then when I get it all sorted the way I want to have it done, I just cut and paste it. And then, you know how they have those, you know, what's the EC2 instance ID, what's the load balancer ID, depending on the ticket. Then I just quickly copy and paste those. But there's been so many times when I'm right in the middle of working on a ticket, and then suddenly I get logged out. So yeah, that's never good. Okay, is this guy done yet? Okay, it's done. So let's go back here. We should have a load balancer. It's not a very impressive load balancer because all we really have is we've associated it to our VPC, our two private subnets, and our essentially placeholder security group. Okay. Now, to test my theory, if we refresh this, there is still no global accelerator security group. Okay. If I go back now to the global accelerator, my theory is when we go to the 443 listener, we're going to do this manually for now, and then we'll come back. Our region is CA Central 1. We talked about this already, right? 100% of the traffic is going to go to this region. And then we're going to add an endpoint. It's an ALB. That's its unique identifier. And we want 100% of the traffic to go to that particular load balancer. And we're going to click Save. Okay. View details. Really doesn't show us anything. If we go back to our VPC console, add our VPC filter, go to security groups, there it is. Okay. So mystery solved. You create the GA, the global accelerator. In our case, we create the load balancer and put that in the two private subnets. And then, even though I did it manually here, you associate your global accelerator with the load balancer through the endpoint group configuration. When you do that, the global accelerator is creating this security group on your behalf. Okay. Now here's the tricky part with this is, since this isn't created in CloudFormation, how do we reference that name? Reference the security group ID. We could do something fancy here, but to be honest, what I would generally do is I would set all this up And then I would add this security group manually. The horrors, right? I would add it manually to the security group for the load balancer that we created programmatically. And I would just make sure that's well documented, probably with a big call out that says, this security group is created by the Global Accelerator, and we manually associate it with the load balancer. You could do probably a custom resource or something like that, where we could have a Lambda function that looks this up and gets it. But, you know, I kind of look at the amount of work to do that. Then I have to maintain a Lambda function and all that kind of stuff, and the code potentially, I know it's not really going to change, but it's a one-time thing. So do I automate it for the sake of automating it? I don't know. I kind of lean towards, we'll just click on the button and do it. Okay. So having said that, why don't we, if I go back to our little cheat sheet diagram here for a second, what we have now is we've got our global accelerator, we've got our load balancer, and we deployed this EC2 instance. We did that manually for the time being. The reason I did this manually for now is just to test this part out once we get there. And once we're happy with the config, what we'll actually do is we'll create a machine image for this, and then we'll deploy it with CF. Okay. This little arrow right here, we just did manually. So I think what we'll do is we'll wire this into CloudFormation so that we've got the global accelerator and the load balancer configured programmatically, and then the association between these two resources handled through CloudFormation as well. Okay, so I think that's what we'll do next. All right, let's do that. So if we go back to the editor, oh, you know what I'm going to do, actually, before I end up with either an error or a bunch of connections, and then I'm like, which ones did we do? I'm going to go here. There's our listener. This is the group that we just created manually, and I'm going to delete it. Okay. And we'll do this part programmatically now. Okay. So these were created through CloudFormation already. Now what I want to do is create the endpoint group programmatically. So let's actually pull this up, because it is very similar to a load balancer configuration, but I don't know the type definitions. So we created the listener. We're after the endpoint group. So let's have a quick look at what we need to do here, and then we'll build it out. All right, so there's our type definition. That's logical. This is logical. Do we need to provide the health check info, or will it give us some defaults? Default is 30 seconds. This is, oh, let's actually look at this. Not required, not required, not required. Yeah, it doesn't look like we're going to need to do much here. The default value is TCP, which is fine. I think we should try to do this as simple as possible to get it all wired up. Okay, so let's do it. I'm going to copy this into a different browser so I could just use it as reference as we're typing. Yeah, that's exactly it, Common. Like sometimes I'm just like, I'm going to spend time troubleshooting a Lambda function, and then I'm going to get a notice from AWS that the runtime my Lambda function is using is now out of date. It's a pretty static configuration. I would argue, as long as it's well documented, so that as you move on to another project, the next person who steps in knows what you did and how you did it. I don't know. You'd have a hard time convincing me to write that. Okay, so there's our listeners, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to create our endpoint. Actually, let's make sure we word this the same way that we did up here. Did we write anything fancy? Okay, so add our resources. We need to accept traffic on TCP 98. Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, so really what we have here are eventually two endpoint groups. the first routes TCP 443 traffic to a private/internal ALB. And then ultimately what we're going to do is say the second routes TCP 9898 traffic to a private EC2 instance. And that's the instance that we just set up manually for the time being for testing. So we're not going to worry about that guy for now. We're going to set this up. So let me just see what we have to provide here. I'm going to call this ALB endpoint group. I don't know why my editor keeps doing that. Accelerator endpoint group. All right, so the first thing is we have endpoint configuration, which has got a bunch of stuff in it. Endpoint group region, and we're just going to do ref AWS region. This will pick up where we're deploying this, which is going to be in, I think I have to put this in single quotes. I can never remember. Let's put it in single quotes. Okay. So that'll pull the region where we're deploying this stack. So in our case, that's going to be CA Central 1. We already decided we're going to leave the health checks as is and see what it does by default. We have to provide the listener ARN. So we'll figure out how to refer to that in a second. We don't want any port overrides. We'll leave the threshold count. Oh, and then there's this traffic dial percentage. What is the default for that? The default is 100. In our case, it's 100, right? We don't have multiple endpoint targets for our listener. It's just that one load balancer. I think we'll just keep it simple and leave it like this. So let's work through these. What is first? Actually, let's do the easy one first. The listener ARN. This is the Global Accelerator listener. So I'll just quickly look up, what does the listener resource return? So a ref to that logical reference will return the ARN of the listener. So we just can do this. Actually, what did I call it? Global Accelerator. I think. I'll check. There's our parameters. Yeah, we just called it Global Accelerator. So that's easy. Okay. There we go. So really all we need is our endpoint configuration. Let's actually work on this bit. We'll look at the documentation first just to see what the heck it's expecting. Oops. Okay. So the attachment ARN, the Amazon resource name of the cross-account attachment that specifies the endpoints or resources that can be added to the accelerator and principals. It's not required, and we're not doing cross-account attachments, so that's fine. The client IP preservation enabled. So this basically preserves the IP address of the client, the resource that's making the request, okay? And when it's enabled, when when your endpoint is a load balancer, an application load balancer. This value is true or false. The default value is true for new accelerators. Not required. If it sets that by default, we'll leave it. The endpoint ID, an ID for the endpoint. If the endpoint is a network load balancer or application load balancer, this is the Amazon resource name, the ARN of the resource. Ooh, this is interesting. I'm just thinking about the deployment order that we have, because we deploy. Oh, how are we going to do this? Here's why I'm hesitating. If we look at this, this is our current pipeline. I know it's an extremely impressive pipeline, but you can see the way that I tackled it originally was the global accelerator goes before everything else. I almost think the global accelerator has to come at the end now, because I need to refer to this load balancer. Okay. Common, what do we got here? Is Global Accelerator a service which routes customer requests through the AWS back? Yeah, it does. So that's one of the benefits is you get that customer or that client onto the AWS Global Network as close to the origin as possible, right? And then we're going to leverage the AWS network to get them from point A to point B. So that's one of the benefits. There's some other benefits too, like you've got things like client affinity and that kind of stuff. And you've got lots of really fine-grained control over how the traffic is actually routed once it hits the GA, right? Like multiple regions, even sending across attachments in different accounts and things. We're doing this really simply, but yeah, when my customers use this, a lot of them are using it because they have a very specific requirement to use a static IP. And one of the things global accelerators give us 2 static IPs. I know there's other ways to do it, but this just seems to be something that seems to come up quite often in deployments. Okay. What's your second question? There was a thing, I think, with some static IPs or something. Yeah, static IPs as well. Do you have a scenario for which you are building this? Yeah, I actually do. Yeah. So real world, no, it's fine. You're derailing. It's not a problem. Real world scenario is I got a customer that has a single domain. Let's say it's Acme Widgets, right? .xyz. That's the domain we're going to use here. And they need to be able to route both HTTP and TCP traffic through a single subdomain on that domain, right? On Acme Widgets. And I kind of thought, oh, we could, put a network load balancer in front of the ALB, and I just couldn't get it to work to meet the customer's requirements. And then I found the Global Accelerator. So what I'm muddling my way through here, I've actually built already, but I'm purposely not just copying that and kind of working it through in my brain again. But that's the real world scenario we're kind of duplicating here. So I think we need to change this, because if I'm understanding this documentation here, the endpoint ID, if the endpoint is an NLB or an ALB, then it has to be the ARN of that resource. So I need that resource there first, right? So let's make a quick change here on this. If we go to our deployment script and we look at this, oops. I know I don't need to do this, but it keeps it straight in my brain. I'm actually going to take these lines, 16, and I'm going to put them at the bottom of the file. I know. I can control this with these need statements, at least logically, but I just like to do this because it helps me keep it straight in my head when I'm looking at this later. So the job that needs to be deployed is our ALB, right? Because we need now to refer to the ARN from the load balancer in our GA deployment, which also means in our ALB definition, we do need to add an output. So let's do this. It's expecting the ARN. So we called this ALB. Very creative name. ALB ARN. So the value is something, and then we're going to say name, and we're just going to use the same old thing we've done. And we'll say ARN. Okay. Perfect. Now, let's just quickly check. What does the load balancer? I won't pull this screen up. I'm just going to Google it quickly. When we define the load balancer, what are the return values that we get? Okay, perfect. A ref will return the ARN. So I can just do this, ref ALB. So that'll set this as our ARN of the load balancer, which means we can go to GA now, go up here, I think we just called this stack references, ALB stack, right? And then the type definition is just string. Down here, oh, I don't have this set up yet. Let's just try to do this all in one shot. Huh. Famous last words, right? I gotta look this up again. Sorry, I closed the window. I can't remember what they expected for the definition name for the endpoint config here. Endpoint group, it is endpoint ID. Okay. And then here, we're going to pull that crazy function in again. fn import value. Right? Like that. All right. And then there's a wait definition. What do they expect with that? It says required no, but in the console, I'm going to set this just to be sure. We're going to say wait. I don't know what I was spelling there. 255. We'll leave that. We've got our global accelerator. Let's see what this does. All right. Yeah, we made a lot of changes, so I'm not surprised. Something failed in our validation phase. Oh, you know what? I added the reference to the load balancer stack, but we didn't have it in the configuration itself. So that's an issue. And I'm just noticing my audio is a little out of whack. Give me a sec. All right, I think that's pretty good actually. All right, so let's fix this error. And this is just in our deployment script. We referred to the load balancer stack now in here in the GA deploy, and we don't have it. So I'm just going to yank this. We're going to say ALB stack. This is just ALB. And then we just have to do this. ALB stack equals ALB stack. In theory, that'll at least fix that first error. Okay. I don't know what this is going to actually do. And I'll tell you why. Because I think I mentioned on the last stream, what I would normally do for this is I'm working in my little demo environment. Oh, I'll fix this in a sec. I'm working in my demo environment, but in a non-demo environment, I'm going to do the validations and I'm going to generate change sets in CloudFormation. I'm not going to let CloudFormation just deploy automatically. I want a person to look at it and verify before. So what I would normally do in this case is we would just make sure we update the load balancing stack first and then do the global accelerator stack next, because the global accelerator stack needs to get some output values from the load balancer. It'll be interesting. I'm controlling this through GitLab CI, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in CloudFormation when this gets deployed. Oh, what did I do wrong? GA ALB stack. What did I miss? ALB stack. Didn't I add it here? Oh, look. Spacing issue. Third time's a charm, right? Yeah, you got it. Common. Good call. Okay, there we go. Now let's do our merge. We got a lot of changes here this time around. Let's do that. All right, so we need our VPC first. Security groups associated with that. The load balancer has to rely on the security group, and then GA relies on the load balancer. Here, we'll draw lines too, just to make it look cooler. I guess I could put the VPC deploys on validate as well, or depends on, if I wanted to. The only thing that's happening here, if I did it right, is if we go and look at CloudFormation, the ALB stack should have an output now. There it is, right? So we needed this ARN to pass to the Global Accelerator. Okay, so it says the Global Accelerator is updating. Ah. Oh, look, I've just got a messed up export name. So if we just check it here, I got an extra ALB on the Global Accelerator side. So let's fix that. ALB. Did I mess up here? Let's go back to Firefox for a second. I'm literally just going to copy this for the time being. The old school method of checking something. Right, so this is our stack, TW Accelerator Demo ALB. Oh, yeah, there we go. Hopefully this fixes it. Oh boy. I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, I'm on vacation this week. And my vacation coincided with the Steam summer sale. I'm maybe slightly a little sleep deprived. I'm gonna blame the issue on the Steam summer sale and too many video games to play. All right, let's try this again. So let's do merge request. Okay, so what am I playing? In the Tuesday night gaming session, we have been playing Schedule 1, which if you have not tried that, it's a really fun game. Basically, you're a drug dealer, and I play with 3 people, and we're just having a blast. Making and selling drugs. It's kind of a silly concept, but it's actually a fun game. So we're playing that. And then I picked up something called Planet Crafters, which is a terraforming game. And then I haven't tried it yet, but it was on deal, so I finally picked up Satisfactory, and I've left it in my Steam library. So pretty much playing Planet Crafters and Schedule 1 right now. Both are fun. Tuesday night. I didn't stream this week because I was having some problems with OBS on my PC. But Tuesday nights usually stream some games with a couple friends and play every Tuesday. Something. All right, let's go back over here and see what's going on. Another one. Endpoint configuration is not permitted. Okay, so that again is when you see something like that, it's a typo. So if we go back here, property, endpoint configuration, it looks like it's not a spelling mistake. I've got AWS Global Accelerator endpoint group. Oh, endpoint configurations, plural. Try it again. Okay, good there. Let's do, what are we doing? Merge. That's not new, is it? 2025? It's 2023. So this is the rollback. Okay. That's new. Damn it. Listener ARN. Invalid listener ARN for Global Accelerator. ALB stack ARN. That's pulling out the ARN for our load balancer. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. I was just checking the config. Invalid listener ARN. Okay, if I'm reading this correctly, am I pulling in the ARN of the Global Accelerator and not the ARN of my load balancer? Is that what I did there? Because here's the load balancer. There's the ARN for the load balancer. It's interesting that unless it's just the way it's writing this, invalid listener ARN, and it's showing, it's got to be, I've got to have a typo in what I'm doing here. That's the ALB. ALB stack ARN. Oh, endpoint ID. I got this messed up. I got this backwards, I think. The endpoint endpoint ID is the what do I have? I got something weird here. So the endpoint configuration. Listener ARN. Did I get these things messed up? Oh. This here, I'm pointing the listener to the Global Accelerator, the GA, not the listener. This is the listener. And I want to point it to this listener right here. So let's, okay, it's expecting the ARN of the listener. Sorry, not the Global Accelerator. So let me just figure out what that is. it's also a ref. So I just basically have to go HTTPS listener 443. Okay. I think. HTTPS listener. This is still referring to the ARN of our load balancer. This is the typo. Oh boy. Let's try this again. Let's make sure this is saved. What am I doing? That's saved. I have forgotten all my keyboard shortcuts. There we go. Jeez. Endpoint group configuration. Okay. The merge, or sorry, the validate is the easy part, it seems. We're able to get that done every time. That guy. Ah, there we go. Update in progress. There's our endpoint group. So in theory, what should be happening is if we go to the Global Accelerator, this is our listener, there's our endpoint group, and that should refer to our load balancer, ALB. It's healthy right now because there's nothing behind it, but that's fine. This is still going, but it looks pretty good. Let's go back to our cheat sheet and see what we can do next. Okay, we want to go here. We've got our GA. We've got it pointing to the load balancer. We got our load balancer, and we need to update the security group, but that's fine. I've got my demo EC2 instance here, and we've got the EC2, the security group for it. I think the next logical thing to do, even though this is deployed manually for now, is assuming that this endpoint group gets configured properly. Let's just set that one, and we'll hard code this ID for the time being in our CloudFormation template to test it all out. Okay. So let's do that next. This is taking a bit of time, which, if I recall, it didn't take this much time when we deployed it manually, or maybe it did. Whenever it sits like this, it makes me nervous. If we go to CloudTrail, we could very quickly look in event history. Oh, look at, see this right here? I think this is probably because we did it manually originally, and I didn't clean up that security group. I don't know if this will cause it to fail or not, but let's try it and see what it does. If it fails, we'll delete the Global Accelerator like we did before, clean up that security group, and then deploy it again. Yeah, it's still update in progress. Okay, so while we're waiting for that, why don't we work on our other listener config? Not our listener config, sorry, our endpoint group. So there's our endpoint group for that, and then we're going to do EC2 endpoint group. Actually, why don't I just copy this? What do we got? 7 lines? In this case, we're going to hard code this. This will be our EC2 instance ID for the time being. Let me just grab that. So that'll go there. And I'm just going to make a note. Hard-coded for now. Just testing. Okay. And then this is going to change to HTTPS. Oh, what did I call it? Sorry, HTTP listener, I guess. Nope, I didn't call it that. What did I call it? Oh, TCP listener. Okay, so that's all we need to do there. Now I can't deploy this if, excuse me, if the stack is still in progress or hung up. So let's see what it's doing. Wrong place. Here. Yeah, I would assume this is going to fail on us because it's got that duplicate security group. Okay, I'm going to, oh, it won't even let me delete it. So we're kind of stuck there for now. What else could we do? If we go back to here, right? This listener config is hung up because I think of that security group that we were testing. So that's stuck. We've got our EC2. You know what we could do on this EC2 instance? We could set up our what's it called? I'm just going to put a dummy page for Apache on it, and then we can figure out some way just to have a port open. What was it? 9898, I think we decided. So we need a little bit of software on that guy to keep that port open for us. Why don't we work on that and wait for our stack to time out? So we're in Firefox, and let's hope that the EC2 instance works a little bit for us. Okay, so we're just going to use Session Manager, connect to it. And I'm not sharing the right screen. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so all I did is I went to the EC2 console, I selected the EC2 instance, and then I clicked connect and selected Session Manager, and now we've got a session. Okay, I can't unfortunately make this any bigger that I know of, so it's going to be a little small. I apologize. But what we can do now is we'll just run sudo dnf update. I don't know if what version I deployed. Okay, so nothing to do there. Then we'll do dnf install. I can never remember if it's Apache or HTTPD. All right, there we go. We're not going to do anything fancy with our Apache server, so that's installed. And then, you know, the other thing that we need is some way just to open a port on this machine and keep it open. You know, we could probably do that with, is it NC? I think it's NC. So let's say sudo dnf install NC. I think this will do the trick. It's not going to be fancy, but for our testing, I think it'll be okay. Let's do this. Sudo systemctl enable HTTPD. So that'll turn on the Apache server by default. And then we're going to do cd. By default, it's in var www. And then HTML. Okay. And you know what? Rather than trying to type in this editor, we're going to just put this in our repository instead. So we will create a new directory, and we're going to call this, we'll just call it HTML. Okay? And all we're going to do in here is create a really crappy little landing page. Actually, why don't we do this? This will be more fun. We've got Q running, so why don't we do this? Q. Could you create a HTML page that we could use demonstrate and test this in the, wow, I can't type, in the HTML directory in the project. I'm going to say this, keep it simple, but feel free to have some fun. And let's see what it does. Comment, I'm often using Caddy for quick web pages. Oh, okay. I don't know what that is. I'll have to try it. Pretty cool little piece of software written in Go. So yeah, there you go. Darko would be proud of you. Let's see what Q does for us. This could be interesting. While it's thinking, let's go back over to the console and see if our QA deployment timed out yet. Oh, it updated. Oh, great. That's good. So if we go to Global Accelerator, we were just basically waiting on the endpoint group to get created, right? So there's our endpoint group, and it's pointing to the load balancer. So that's good. That's good. When it took that long, I definitely thought it was going to time out on us. All right, let's see what this did. Oh my God, I told it to keep it simple, but have some fun. Look, it's got all sorts of jQuery, I guess, in here. Look at this. It's got a style sheet. Global Accelerator demo, CloudFormation live. Okay, we're gonna let it do this. Live on Twitch. Oh man, this is hilarious. Latency test, so it's running some simple scripts for us, I guess. Down here. Timestamp, server info. Well, I did tell it to have a little bit of fun, right? So we'll say yes. Perfect. I've created a fun and functional HTML demo page. It's got color-coded status messages. Ooh, look, a hidden code Easter egg up, down, left. Oh, that's interesting. Retro gaming font. I love it. All right. Now, the trick might be making sure that we can copy this. Okay, so I grabbed all the pages, all the lines. I'm hoping that we can go over here. Again, I don't want to do anything too fancy, right? So in the HTML directory, I'm going to say sudo vi index.html, and I'm hoping, there we go. Okay, great. Now, if I do sudo, no, actually it's, I always forget. Oh, I didn't start it, did I? Oh man, there we go. All right, so now if I run grep httpd, it's running as Apache. And in this directory, this is all owned by root right now, so we would just get 403 errors. So what I'm going to do, and I don't think this is the most secure solution, but for what we're doing, it'll work. Okay. Apache, is it just, yeah, it's Apache. And we're just going to give Apache ownership on that directory, right? It only has, well, it has read write. I'm sure we can knock this down somehow, but for what we're doing, I think it's fine. So now if I just do curl localhost, there, okay, the page works. So that's great. Now we have no way to get to this at this point, but we've got our Q developed, actually, yeah, let's say Q developed web page for us. I'll be interested to see what this looks like. All right, so that's that part. And if we flip back to our IDE here, what we could do now is think about, actually, we already coded up the endpoint group for the TCP port, right? So we can just commit these. Feature Q, we'll give Q credit for this. Q created a test web page, and we added an endpoint group for TCP 9898. Oh, well, close enough. Okay. It's good. Oh, not branches. Sorry, merge. Run our merge. My phone's buzzing in my pocket here. All this really should do is add our other endpoint group, right? That's it, to our global accelerator. And it looks like it's doing it. The other thing that we wanted to look at was I cheaped out on those health checks, which I think are probably too simple. But look at that. Oh, that's great. That's good. Right? We've got to modify our security groups, if you remember. Okay, so that should mean that this should be, endpoint group should point directly to our EC2 instance. It's marked unhealthy, probably because the security group doesn't allow the traffic. So if we go look at this, and this is another example of where we could get fancy, but I think we're just going to go here. It allows 443, from the load balancer, right? This is the source. And we need now to, okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to edit this guy manually. We're going to add a new inbound group. We're going to say custom TCP. Our port is 9898. And in here, we should see the global accelerator. Okay, so I'm going to say allow inbound TCP 9898 from GA. And then I'm going to do that. Okay, so I know that that's a manually created rule. We'll give that a minute to come to life. The other thing, let's just oh no, our load balancer is basically empty at this point. So the next things that we need to do then are create listeners and all that great stuff. Let's ask Q another question, because I don't know how. I'm hoping that NC will do what we want, but I'm not 100% sure. I need to keep open a TCP port 9898 on an EC2 instance and keep it open. I'm using it for testing during the live stream. Can you suggest how I could do this easily? I did install NC on the instance. I wonder if it'll give us a little shell script or even just tell us how to run it. There we go. Keep restarting after each connection. Run in the background with no hup. I like the no hup option. Okay. Oh, look at this. Let's do that instead. Okay. All right, we'll jump back to our EC2 instance and let's see. Did that also no hup it in the background somehow? While true. Actually, there's a little timestamp one as well. So let's use the timestamp one. It doesn't no hup it, but that's fine. Like, what else are we going to be doing on this in theory? So there we go. So that's ports open. We modified the security group so it has the path through now. This guy, how often, see what I've got here, the undefined health check path. That to me is weird, but I think it'll just go to this port because it is a TCP connection. That feels not completely baked. So we might have to check that. 30 seconds, threshold count, so we got to wait 90 seconds. We could also do a test, right? If I go... Yeah, let's just wait and see what it does. Endpoints in this group have an unhealthy status. Make sure the accelerator can ensure their service is responding to protocol and port. Well, you know, we could test it. I could go here. I could go to EC2. This might be an easy way to test it. And I could add a couple extra rules here for now. So I could just say edit inbound, TCP, from my IP. And then we could also do, I know I put HTTPS here, which yeah, I think that needs to be HTTP. We'll change that. I'm not going to re-encrypt from the load balancer to the EC2 instance. Okay. This won't really help us because I have, oh, this won't work because I have no way, this EC2 instance doesn't have a public IP. So either way, I can't get to it. I got to fix, let's remove those so I don't mess myself up. We got to fix this endpoint group if it doesn't come to life, right? Yeah. I'm going to try something manually first just for testing, and then we'll fix it permanently. We want it to go to 98.98. Our health check here. Yeah, there's really not much we can do in here. So what else could it be? Oh, look at that. Healthy. Yay. All right. Patience is what we need. Now, for this, we're just going to go to Route 53. And I have our little testing domain that we use for all this stuff, Acme Widgets. And I'm going to get rid of this and get rid of this. These are old records that I was using for another demo. And instead, I'm going to create a new record, Acme Widgets. It's an alias that points to our global accelerator. And here's our global accelerator. Okay. And then just to sort of, for completeness, we'll say www is a CNAME that points to Acme Widgets. Right? I know there's no web page here yet, but that means that from our IDE, I'd be shocked if Route 53 is updated that fast. But if I just did, actually, let's do it like this. No, that's still the old one. I want to say the global accelerators, I think they had like a 166 address on them. So that's probably pointing to the old load balancer. If we go back to global accelerator. There we go. Just about time due, isn't it? Let me get logged back in. You know, the good part about this is it forces you to clean up your tabs after a while, because all those tabs are now going to be useless. All right. But it also means I forget what I was doing. Why did I want to do this? Oh, I was looking at the IPs on the Global Accelerator. Oh, 76. Maybe it has updated. So what's it end in? 40? Okay, let's go over here. That's it. Okay, so if I do... Okay, oh, you know what? The port is probably dead now, isn't it? Yeah, I could just use a curl command. Okay. The port's probably dead because I didn't run that as a no-hup command. So let's just find it again and make sure that 9898 is still open. Although maybe it still is running. Let's do, what is it, netstat? Will that do it? Okay, yeah. So we'll just grep 9898. No, it's not open. Okay, let's just let's grab that command again from Q here. Copy. Run it again. Ooh, it's already in use. Didn't we just check to see if... Okay. Could I do it this way? Oh, look, it is still running. All right, so that means then in theory, if we use Q's example and we go where? We go back to the IDE and we run a simple curl command, right? So we say curl-v. Do I have NC actually? Do I have NC? I do. Okay, NC. Acme widgets.xyz 9898. Okay, it didn't complain. Oh, you know what though? We won't actually be able to... Would we see the print on this side? I don't think we would we? So we used option 6, timestamp responder, great for stream demos. While true, do echo. Yeah, I think something is messed up with this, because if I'm reading this right, I should have seen an echo response here with my NC command. So let's go back to, let's kill that the NC command, and we'll just restart it just to make sure. What do we got? It's this guy. And then let's just run this again. Okay, so now we know that's running, right? There we go. Okay, so what we're doing is if we flip back to our little cheat sheet here, my iPad is locking on me. Give me a sec, right? So what we've just done is we've gone, this is me, right? Through the Global Accelerator, through that to our EC2 instance. And we're talking directly to 9898. So that's progress. The thing that's left is setting up our load balancer now. But we've been at this for a couple hours. It's 9 o'clock here, or almost 9 o'clock. I think what we'll do is we will finish up the load balancer next week, because we've got to figure out, what do we have to do? We have to create a listener on our load balancer. And we have to create target groups. You know what? Let's see if we can get this finished. It's really not that much left, is it? Famous last words. Let's try it. I want to see our fancy page. So if we go back to our load balancer, there's our load balancer. We need to create our listeners, right? And what we need is a secure listener, 443. So we're going to use ACM. Oops, sorry, didn't change my screen. There we go. We're going to use ACM Acme widgets.xyz. And then we need an unsecure connection. We're actually going to do it this way. Actually, you know what? I don't even need an unsecured connection, do I? Because the Global Accelerator isn't even listening on an unsecure port, which in real life, what I did on the Global Accelerator is I had 80 and 443 pointing to the load balancer. And if a client happened to connect on an unsecure port, then we used the redirect rule on the load balancer to basically say, hey, you got to use SSL, and we redirected it. But I think for this project, let's just set up the listener on a secure port since that's all we have. And then we need our target group, right? Which is basically our EC2 instance. So famous last words, this doesn't seem too bad, right? Let's try it. I got to pull up the listener config now for this. So let me just grab that quickly. All right. So we're going to call this ALB. Actually, what did we call the GA ones? I want to call them something similar. We just called it ALP endpoint group. Okay, HTTPS listener. So we'll do the exact same thing on the load balancer config. So I'll just say HTTPS listener 443. I don't know what I'm doing, but that keeps messing up the indentation. AWS. All right. We're not going to mess with the policy, the ALPN policy. We'll have the default one, which should be the most recent one, the AWS recommended one. So I think that's fine there, unless I'm getting that mixed up, but we'll leave it as is. We do need to find a cert because it is a secure listener. We'll come back to this. I'm going to hard code this. Right? There's no reference or anything that I know of to get that, so that's fine. Our default actions. What else do we need? Load balancer ARN. Placeholder there. Our port is going to be 443. Our protocol will be HTTP. I think it's HTTPS, right? HTTPS. Oh, see, yeah, I mixed up. Look, I'll show you what I was looking at here. Over to Firefox. When I said it will use the most current version, I was looking at the ALPN policy versus the SSL policy. What is this? The name of the application layer protocol negotiation policy. We're not going to use that. Down here, this is for HTTPS and TLS listeners. There are a long list of SSL policies that you can apply to the load balancer based on your specific requirements. Amazon has a default one that they describe as sort of a good balance between security and performance. So we're going to leave that default one. But if you had very specific security requirements, you could look at the other policies that are available and select the one that's appropriate for what you're doing. But for what we're doing today, it'll suffice. Okay, so that's good. I think we're good there. We really just have to fill in some blanks here. Let me get the cert ID. And this is actually going to be certificate ARN. And let me just grab that from the console. This is just our, we use this Acme widgets thing for all these demos. and it's been deployed for so long. I don't think it was deployed through CloudFormation back in the day. So we're going to just grab the ARN for that, and I will plunk it here. Oh, I always do that. Hold on, let's try that again. Copy. Paste. There we go. Okay, so that's the ARN. Our default action, I can never remember what this looks like. I basically just need a forwarder is all we're going to do. Right? We want to forward everything to the target group, which we haven't defined yet. So this might have some missing pieces until we get it all done. Forward config. Target groups. What am I doing here? Do we need anything else in the default action? We need an order. So this will be order is 1. I was having this problem last week too. Target group ARN to do, and then there's a type definition. It's forward. We're going to actually do this through the console for a second, just as a test. Something doesn't feel quite right about how I laid that out, so let's just do this. We're going to create a target group. I'm slowly cleaning up the security class that I did. We'll delete that. Okay. Our instance, we're just going to call this CFN. Let's just call it this so it doesn't overlap with anything. This is going to be HTTP to our web server. Tie it to our VPC. That's fine. That's fine. And this will be our only target. All right, so there's our target group. And then we need here, we need a listener with a rule. And again, we're just going to make this HTTPS. We're going to forward to the target group. This is the thing that I always mess up in my head. So we're forwarding it to that group. We're using Acme widgets. And then this is the policy that I was talking about. This is the SSL policy. So that's the default one. We'll say add. All right. And it says not reachable. Why is that not reachable? Listener port is the security groups for your load balancer don't allow traffic on this listener port. Really? What did we do? Oh yeah, remember we just put a placeholder on here. We didn't have any rules because we were mucking around with that Global Accelerator. So this is just like we did before. We're going to say SG Global Accelerator. Now let's do HTTPS from GA, and just like that. Okay, so we can just see what we did there. So save. Outbound's fine. That shouldn't be a big deal. Okay, so that came to life. Really, all I want to do is describe this listener in the rule so that I can get the proper configuration. So this is what I would do if I can't make sense of the configuration documentation in CloudFormation. So let me just find the describe listeners. I think it's just describe listener. So if we go if we click on the listener, here's the crazy ARN. I'm going to do this in Cloud Shell, and hopefully it will do what we want. So ELB v2 describe listeners, and it says listener ARNs. There we go. And I'm just going to make one change. We're going to say -- output YAML. So this is a trick I use all the time when I'm not sure about, see how it's got like the spacing and the dashes, and sometimes with those, I'm like, I just can't figure it out. We're not going to worry about the stickiness config. Yeah, actually, I think we got it, right? I'll compare this to what's in our configuration. So we need forward config. So default actions, forward config. Our target groups, I'm going to bounce back and forth here. Our target groups are just another dash. Let's just get all the placeholders done so we can kind of make sense of it. Where did that config go now? Listener. Default action. Forward config. Okay, so target groups. Then we've got target group ARN. And we don't have that yet, so we'll just use the placeholder again. And then weight is 1. Actually, we don't even need that. And since we only have a single target group, let's keep it simple. So we actually need the target group first. Target group. And what's the config of this thing? The health check should be okay in the defaults. I don't think we have to give it anything there. It'll just sort of set the defaults based on what it is we define, I think. Yeah, we'll try it. So we'll leave all that. Okay, so we do need, I think we need to define in here a matcher. So what is the response that we expect to get back from the target? And this is an HTTP code. And in our case, that should just be 200, right? The regular response code. We need a name for this. So we're going to borrow from here because we've got our name definitions done over here. So we'll just yank this line and go back to our load balancer and plunk that here. And we're just going to call this, I generally use TG for target group, so we'll use that. Port is going to be 80 in this case, not 90, 80. Protocol is HTTP. Right, we're not re-encrypting traffic going from the load balancer to the target in this case. Tags will come back to targets. What is this definition? Availability zone, we don't need that. ID, the ID of the target. So in this case, it's our instance ID. So we're going to say, again, hard-coded for testing, right? Since we didn't deploy our EC2 instance programmatically, we have no reference that we can use at this point. So I'm just going to hard code the instance ID for now. Maybe next week, if we want to continue this, we'll build this EC2 instance out programmatically next week. Okay, so we'll just dump that here. And then what's this? The port on which the target is listening. So we're going to say port 80 as well. Okay, that's fine. Targets, the target type, I think, is just instance. Yeah, okay, so target type is instance. And then we need a VPC ID. So this, we do have a reference to, right? So we can go fn import value sub like that. And we can tag this. So we're going to use tags just because we've used them throughout the project. Tagging things is a good habit. So dump that there. Okay, there's no placeholders in here. We do have to add the VPC stack, or oh, we already pulled that in, didn't we? Right here. So yeah, that's already added. We've got our target group, and now we have to just refer to that target group here. And the return values from the target group is a ref. All right, so we can say ref. What did we call it? EC2 target group? Ref EC2 target group. It's just, it seems too easy. Seems too easy. Oh, and you know, before we deploy this, just in case, we're going to go clean up the test stuff that we did. Just in case something conflicts with it. So we're going to go target groups, delete. That won't work because I have it associated to a listener. So we have to delete the listener first, I think. Can we delete this, or do we have to delete something else? Okay, there we go. Great. So now there's our target group. We should be able to delete that because it's not referenced anymore. Okay. And then see this? I do this to myself all the time. If you're using CloudFormation and you get something like this where it says an error occurred, blah, 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 and it starts listing off like, see how it's giving us type definitions essentially? It usually means instead of 2 colons, I've used 1 somewhere. So let's go back to our IDE and have a look. There's 2 and 2. That's our target group. Right there. I don't think we made any other changes. That took me a while to figure out because it's just a really generic error message. That was a tough one to find. Now I know whenever I see that sort of nondescript error, I look for that. Not out of the woods yet. What else is here? Unrecognized resource type. So that's, again, a typo in the resource definition or the type definition. Let me just check these. What was the error message? Which one was it complaining about? It was complaining about the target group. Okay. I'm just having a look. Elastic load. Oh. Balancing. Did we do that somewhere else too? No, we got balancing here. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, we made it through the validation. This is the one with all the changes, so let's see what happens. Ah. Oh, protocol. You know, there's the two most common errors I run into in AWS. One of two situations I find myself in. And I'm not going to say these in any particular order, but it's either one, permissions related, because if you're practicing least privilege in AWS, remember that identity and access management will deny everything by default. Okay, so there's that. And then the other most common error is spelling mistakes. Never fails. So let's find protocol in, yeah, there we go, protocol. All right, so that's a relatively painless one. Okay, another merge request. So there's our new update. So, oh, so close. Oh, look it. I left a placeholder. Ah, oh, remember what I said this last part would be easy? Haha. Where did I leave a to-do? Oh, look it right there. Okay. It's not even related to our target groups. So just ALB. And I'm just going to check this one to make sure that if we use a ref, it actually returns the ARN of the load balancer. Oops. Yeah, it returns the ARN. Okay, so that should fix that problem. least the pipeline isn't huge, so we can find our errors quickly and fix them. It's always nice. Oh, it's still cleanup in progress. Okay, there we go. Cleanup in progress. So that probably means our pipeline will fail. Yeah, because the job hasn't cleaned up yet. We'll give it a second. This is really the last little piece for us to test, so we got to kind of just wait. Okay, there we go. Rollback complete. Rollback complete. We're going to give this one more go. If we can't get this to work, we'll call it a night and pick it up next week. The target group created successfully last time. So we know this should work. It's just the listener config. Okay, there's our target group. There's our listener. Okay, great, we got it. So if we go to EC2 and we pull up our load balancer, I like this little resource map view. It's going to take a minute. Let's go to our EC2 instance. We probably got booted off. Oh, we didn't. Okay, so it's still listening here, which means if, oh, look at this. In the amount of time our little test instance is running, somebody's rolling over our site, which goes to what else I want to do in this project, a WAF. We'll look at the WAF next week. We won't do that this week. Again, just waiting for the health check to come to life. It's like waiting for a kettle to boil. That's good, that's good. Oh, it's timed out. What did we do wrong? I think we messed our rule up, didn't we? Our security group, maybe? Yeah, look, we're accepting HTTP traffic. Okay, I'm going to add this manually for now to test it, and then if it works, we can fix it. Right? Oh, wait, am I looking in the right spot? I'm not looking in the right spot. EC2 instance, I think, is what we messed up. So if I go to EC2, here, security, we're only allowing HTTPS from the load balancer, which we're not doing right now, right? So I'm going to add this additional rule. And this should be our ALB, which is the same rule as that. Okay. This message here, you can get more information. This is another thing we'll work on next week. It's always good to have your load balancer writing its logs to an S3 bucket. Going to give you a lot of information. But whenever you see a request timed out like this, generally, I would always start with your security group because it's not giving you an error code, right? If you get an error code in here, you know it's making it to, in our example, the target, which is an EC2 instance. So you could look on the EC2 instance for some configuration or for some troubleshooting. The other thing that we should do in this project, which we don't have at this point, is set up VPC flow logs as well. Always a great troubleshooting tool. Come on. I'm sure we have port 80 open because we ran the curl test earlier, right? So that should be good. Let's just check our target group config. Right, so the default rule is a listener on 443 because we're getting 443 traffic from the Global Accelerator. And then basically we say, if you get this traffic, forward it to this target group. And this target group is HTTP 80. Request timed out. I would have thought it would have come to life by now. How many health checks do we have? Where's the health check config? Here. So we need 5, and we're checking every 30 seconds. So what's that, 150 seconds? Oh, there we go. All right, so that means we're getting, originally I loaded this page up and just left it in the background. This is because we didn't have a valid target to go to. Let's refresh. There we go. Look at our little Q developed web page. This is great, right? So it tells us a little bit about where we're coming from, page load time, requests made. Okay. Test the latency. I don't know what this is going to do. Is it going to spit something out? I don't think this is real down here, but it's fun. Okay, that I don't know what that did. Test throughput. Oh, there you go. Look at that. Test failover I don't have. Load test. Running load test simulator. Handling 1,406 requests per second. Okay. I have no idea if this is real or not. But there you go. We got it working. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I wonder if we go back over to our EC2 instance, we pull the EC2 instance up, monitor. It's only 4% utilization. Let's look at the load balancer, because if that actually is simulating those connections, then we could see it here. Yeah, whatever it's doing, it's a little, we didn't look at that code at all. So, hey, that's pretty good. So if we go back to our cheat sheet one last time before we wrap up here today, we've built this, right? So what we've simulated is, this is me. I sent a TCP request to 9898. It went through the Global Accelerator directly to the EC2 instance. And then what we did was we simulated HTTPS traffic, and it routed through the Global Accelerator, through the load balancer to our EC2 instance. And that was our fun little queue-generated website. So there you have it. That's all working. I think what we have to add to this, as we wrap up here, we need a WAF. We'll simulate this next week, logging to S3. And then, because I've mentioned a couple times, we'll set this up to S3. And this little outside box, you could consider this to be our VPC. And we'll write that to CloudWatch logs. And that'll give us more of a complete configuration of all of the different components. And you've got sort of something that is usable. So as always, folks, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Yeah, when I go to the outro screen here, you'll see a QR code that you could scan and sign up for my weekly newsletter where we talk about what we've done on the stream and interesting news articles and stuff like that. So if you made it all the way to the end of the stream, thank you. You know, you might want to consider subscribing. I'll leave that up to you. But we'll be back next Wednesday, not Thursday, back on the regular schedule next week, and we'll finish up the project. So until then, enjoy your week and your weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.